News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am the Malcontent David. It is Thursday, July 15th, 2021. This year is going by much faster than last year did. That is for sure. Thank you so much, Dora, for the share. Really appreciate that. Actually, what I'm going to do is we are going to flip the screens around. So that way I can be staring at your chat instead of staring at myself. Shelly's in the house. Shelly. I hope everybody is doing well this evening. We have kind of 3.5 topics we're going to talk about tonight. The first topic we're going to talk about here, and I'm just going to kind of dive into things, is COVID. And, you know, COVID doesn't care about your feelings. The Delta variant is, hello, Ursine, glad you're here. We're just going to dive right into it tonight. The Delta variant's kind of rearing its ugly head, to say the least at this point. Oh, yes, I'm an absolute huge, from the Boston area. It's in the water. I'm a huge Red Sox fan, long-suffering Red Sox fan. So, funny thing is, like my daughter is a Red Sox fan, and she does not know the misery. You know, some of her earliest memories are Red Sox winning in 2007 World Series. For me, 2004, after they won the World Series, when I woke up in the morning, the first thing I did is I ran and I checked ESPN in the morning because that can't be true. I had to have dreamed it. COVID don't care. Let's go ahead here and we're going to talk about Delta. Delta variant is getting more and more health officials concerned, particularly among the unvaxxed, particularly among younger individuals, and it is increasingly starting to concern some of the companies that make vaccinations. Tonight, Red Sox, that's why I'm wearing the hat, by the way. It looks like it has some like cat fur or something on it. I guess it kind of does. Sorry about that. Damn cat. Red Sox Yankees was canceled for tonight because a minimum of 3 Yankees players have tested positive for COVID. All 3 of them were vaccinated. There is another 3 that they're pending tests. Those 3 are symptomatic. They also had vaccinations, and they believe that they will probably test positive for COVID. So the game was canceled tonight. In part, right, the whole team now is sus because everyone's been exposed. And the other thing that you have there right now at this time of the year, if you're not into baseball, it's a 27-man roster. And so if you have three pitchers that are out, that's really devastating for a team. And as much as I would love to just to the Yankees, we'll just we'll go ahead and give them the day off. In Mississippi, 7% of people who have died of COVID from the first week of June to the first week of July, 7% who have died in Mississippi were vaccinated. 12% of people currently hospitalized are vaccinated. So in the states, what's happening in these states that have very, very low percentage of people that are vaccinated, Delta is getting more of a toehold into both the unvaccinated and vaccinated populations. We talked on Monday about Missouri. They now have more cases of COVID in the hospitals than at the peak over the winter time. Another state who has never had a mask mandate, low percentage of people that are vaccinated, and there is a heavy price that is being paid. Tonight, 46 out of 50 states have growing COVID cases. Most of those cases are among a vast majority, not just most, a vast majority of the cases are among unvaccinated individuals. For people who are hospitalized, it is 95 to 99% nationally. I talked about Mississippi as kind of like, this is the worst case. 95 to 99% of the people hospitalized, unvaccinated. Over 99% of the people who died in the month of June from COVID, unvaccinated. Largely unnecessary deaths. I've seen a couple of different numbers. The official numbers I see from the NIH, people who have died from COVID going through June 1. Remember, there's a couple of problems. One, it's a tailing indicator. And number two, you have several states that are like Florida, that aren't reporting COVID data on the daily anymore because apparently it's all over. Anyway, according to the official number of people who were vaccinated and died from COVID was at 74, but that only goes to June 1. So if you think about the literally over 100 million Americans that are vaccinated, it is still a tiny, tiny fraction. And there is no vaccine that is 100%. None. There is not a single vaccine. The reason that vaccines like for measles, mumps, your MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, the reason these work is when you have 90, 95, 98% of the population vaccinated for these diseases, even though the vaccine isn't 100% effective, it essentially you can't get any community transmission going because so many people are already vaccinated from the disease. So because the disease itself can't get a toehold in the population, for that 1%, 2%, 10%, 15% that the vaccine is not effective, it's going to break through. You don't have that. We don't have that level of protection with COVID. The other thing with COVID, if you're under 12, you can't get vaccinated, period. And we know that little kids are petri dishes. Any parent that has had kids knows little kids are just little petri dishes, and they bring their little petri dish germs home wherever they go. Los Angeles tonight instituting a mask mandate again for indoors. Because and they're not dealing with a low percentage of people who are vaccinated. It's just cases are starting to go up. We're not going to get ahead of this, of COVID. I think people have to start really accepting that is what we're going to do. Yes, Joseph, I'm seeing your comment. And, again, 46 states numbers are up. Numbers are up in Washington State, but it is very small. Other states are seeing a much bigger increase. Georgia, and there are a ton of accusations that Georgia's been cooking the COVID books for over a year. Georgia had over 1,400 cases a day. They're averaging more than 1,000 new cases a day. And when you start getting into those numbers, right, you just start doing the numbers. So if you got 1,000 cases a day, that's going to be 80 people from that day, roughly, that are going to end up in the hospital. Of those 80 people that are going to end up in the hospital, you're going to have roughly 2 people that are never going to leave the hospital. Now, that is an 80, that's 80. And then tomorrow, it's another 80. And then tomorrow, it's another 80. And then the day after that, it's another 80. So these numbers go up. You have states like the state of Tennessee, and this is going to segue, and that's why I say we're going to talk like about 3.5 topics tonight. You have states like Tennessee that have gone, not only are we not going to do outreach to teenagers for COVID vaccines, we're going to stop outreach for all vaccines. So apparently Republicans in the state of Tennessee are pro-tetanus, are pro-polio, are pro-measles, mumps, rubella. It is just stunning to me that this has moved to a level of hostility and anti-science, that it isn't just about COVID. It is about, we are not going to have any conversation or any outreach to teenagers about any vaccination, which is just stunning. And I had used this comparison many times for polio, right? People are like, you say polio and people are terrified of polio. Even people who, like, for instance, I'm not in a generation that grew up to a bunch of people in iron lungs and stuff. That was 20 plus years before I was born. But people are still terrified of those images. The reality is 98% of people who got polio never had any symptoms. Of the 2% that had symptoms, like 1% got paralytic polio. Of that 1%, like 1 to 2% ended up kind of permanently paralyzed, or dying in the state of being in an iron lung or fully disabled. You actually only had about 3,000 to 3,500 polio deaths a year. That's it. But one of the things when I would bring that up, anti-vaxxers would get furious with me because but it's the children. The children get it. And what's happening with Delta right now? The children are getting it. And children are dying from it. And yeah, it's like 5 or 7 a day. That's kind of like the number. So let me pull up the calculator. Let's see. 5 times 365. Should have had this up. 1825. That's approaching, a polio. And it's for 12 and under, it's not preventable. For 13 to 18, this is totally preventable. And I want to wait and see. They were testing the vaccine a year ago now. Trials were started in August and late July. We're a year. There's people who have been vaccinated for a year. These people are saying, we're all going to drop dead in 2 years. Well, then those people that got the early vaccinations and the early tests in July and August, I guess we're going to start counting down for them to drop dead because they got less than a year to go. But you know what they're just going to do? They're going to move the goalposts. They're just going to keep moving the goalposts. And then eventually what will happen is 30 years from now, there's going to be a subset of these anti-vaxxers are going to go, when people are dropping dead at night, see, if they never got the vax, they'd live to be 95. And you know it. Rashi, didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that about your teacher. Pro-death. The thing is, like Anya, I'm seeing your comment here about pro-death. This is the thing I don't understand. How is killing off your voting base, how is this a solid political strategy? And I want to get into that in a little bit. I'm straying from what I want to talk about tonight. Washington State, it's interesting. We wrote the story that we were at 69.8%. I think we pushed publish for that story in like 2 hours. The state went, yay, 70. And I was like, yay, our story's out of date already. So Washington State's at 70% with at least one dose. And that is for 16 and above, because we set the bar higher than what the federal government set the bar. Federal government set the bar at 18 and over. So for 18 and over, we're actually at 75%. There's an interesting thing that's going on. San Juan County, 0 cases. They have 0 cases of COVID. And it's not because they're not testing people. There's zero case. Now, I know some people are going to go, but they're very isolated. Okay. Yeah, they're isolated. There's 17,000 people in San Juan County. Obviously, like towns like Friday Harbor are the biggest towns. But, you know, if we talk about something like Benton County, they're really friggin' isolated out there too in these rural counties. And Benton County, Washington, which has a very low vaccination rate, has one of the highest positivity rates in the United States. Their positivity is 279 out of 100,000. Island County is one of the most vaccinated counties in the United States. They are over 80%. Basically, Island County is almost to the point that anybody who can get a vax who is 12 and over is basically vaxxed there now. Oh, and they have no cases. Oh, and the argument that, well, they're really isolated because tourism's back, baby. The ferries are full. So you got people coming back and forth from areas that are unvaccinated or with low vaccinated areas, and you know you can't, well, it's only vaccinated people going there. You know that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous to even think that. No cases. 279 cases per 100,000. And who's paying for it? You know, because they don't have hospitals in those rural counties. And that's the thing. They don't see it. And this is the thing of human nature. If it's not in your face and you don't see it, it doesn't exist. It's not a problem. Until it becomes a problem when it's at your door. Then it's a problem. Yeah, basically that's part of what they're doing, Stephanie, right? That, you know, this is, you know, it's the yellow star, and it is a Jew that's so friggin' offensive to me. It's the yellow star. This is the start of tyranny. If you're wearing a mask, it's so flippin' ridiculous. This country, if we were in a World War II situation, right, if we had a Pearl Harbor right now, I'm not going to pick it because, you know, whatever country bombs Pearl Harbor, drops some missiles, you know, fires missiles. We wouldn't bomb. We would see the bombers coming at this point. Bunch of missiles in Pearl Harbor over there. We had that moment. We would just get rolled over. Could you imagine the level of sacrifice we had to do in World War II? Right? What was the level of sacrifice? You know, I'm a welder. I don't want to be a welder. No. You have to stay as a welder. If you're not getting drafted to go fight in the war and you're a welder, you have to stay as a welder. Too bad you don't like that job, Buttercup. We need you as a welder or a riveter or a steel worker or whatever. That's number one. Price is all controlled. Tons of industries nationalized by the government. It's basically full-on socialism, baby. Here's your ration card. Ration card for gasoline. Ration card for food. You ever hear the song, the old song, if I knew you were coming, I would bake a cake, bake a cake. You ever heard this song as a kid? That came from World War II because the ingredients to bake a cake, this is why we have birthday cakes. It was a big deal in World War II because of rationing to scrounge up the ingredients to make a cake. You could only buy so much meat. If you were driving somewhere, was this trip necessary? And you could get, you know, like, why are you going? Why are you going there? What are you doing? Hey, you turn off that light. Close those blinds. You want to help enemy planes or enemy ships bomb our country? Could you imagine these restrictions in 2021 America? Could you imagine this? You would have people like on the beaches going, I'm going to point laser pointers into the sky because it's my God-given right, and I don't care if that laser pointer helps get an enemy missile to blow up the building next to me or not. This is literally what you would have today. Anya, they do. And the other thing is like they have this complex, right? They want to be victims. They have this amazing complex of wanting to be victims and creating this self-victimhood. And in doing it, they largely self-own themselves. Here's the bottom line for me. I'm wearing masks again. when I go into, I'm just going to start wearing a mask at 100%. And here's why. I'm vaccinated. I got the J&J. I'm not worried about getting COVID. There's really solid data that if you're vaccinated, your chances of getting Delta, and Delta is the dominant strain in the United States now, it can break through. And we could debate that percentage. It's anywhere from, Israel is saying they're seeing breakthroughs up to 34%, but that's fun with numbers. It's not as bad as it sounds. And others are saying it's 5 to 10%. So take your pick. We know that the COVID vaccine is anywhere from 90 to 95% effective. It's not 100% effective. I'm not worried about getting COVID. I'm really not. Because the data shows if you're a healthy individual, you don't have a crap ton of comorbidities, and you are vaccinated, you're going to be asymptomatic or have light to mild symptoms. Yes, there is a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of people who have died. I would prefer not to die. But what I'm worried about is the long haul symptoms. And that's the part that we don't understand. That it isn't just the potential heart damage or the potential lung damage or the endless blood clots or losing fingers or losing toes, of which all I would never want to have, or in the case of Delta, getting your pancreas destroyed and then having to be a type 1 diabetic for the rest of your life because your pancreas got completely destroyed. Loss of sense of taste and smell. Although interesting with Delta, what they're saying is that's not a symptom with Delta. Delta doesn't appear to be going after the gray matter as much. It appears to be going against other organs in the body. The other thing about Delta is it's really transmissible. It is about 225% more transmissible than the original U.S. COVID strain. Full stop. That hasn't been peer reviewed. And it is from a small sample. But they do know that we know that the UK variant was about 100% double transmissible from the original strain. And we have peer-reviewed data and tons of data on that. And we do know that Delta is more transmissible than the UK variant. So 225, I think we may find out, wow, it's really 180 or it's 200. We might find out it's 250. So the bottom line is I'm going to start wearing a mask again because I don't want the long tail stuff. And that ties into one of the half parts of this conversation. There was a post that I read today from the former lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia. And the former lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia was lamenting on Facebook how they stopped at a Wendy's in Waynesboro, Virginia. I believe it was Waynesboro, Virginia. And the dining room was closed. And the dining room was closed because they didn't have enough staff. And the former lieutenant governor of Virginia wrote this long screed about how this is because nobody wants to work. That's what the problem is. So I had to write a reply. I couldn't let it go. I had to write a reply because I'm just like, you were lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia twice. And you are showing such an amazing, willful ignorance on Economics 101. The unemployment rate in the state of Virginia is 4.5% based on the latest data from the BLS. It's the U3 number. That's the published number. Now, when I went to college, I studied Economics 101, was a business major before I did industrial relations at Caltech. And in Economics 101, in hindsight, despite the fact that we had a very broad Economics 101, we studied Marx and Marx is because Marx was a philosopher and the influence on economics on that and Keynesian, blah, 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 blah. But one of the things my very conservative college professor explained to us was when you reach about 5% employment in the United States, you are at what is called full employment. Now, I know some people go, no, you're not. That's 5% of lazy people that don't want to work. You need to put them to work. No. Wrong. You will always have a percentage of people who are finish school, finish career training, finish vocational training, and are entering the job market. You don't go, all right, I graduated, right, and boom, you're working. You have to go look for a job, and that might not be instantaneous. So you have a percentage of people. You have people who get fired. People get fired, even in a good economy. Not everybody who gets fired got fired for cause. You have people that get laid off. Companies, even in a good economy, do make crappy decisions, and they have to lay off people, and you have companies that go out of business. You have people that quit their jobs, and we got a lot of people quitting their jobs. And all of those people, if this has happened recently and they're actively looking for a job, fall in that U3 number. That is why once you get to about 5%, you're at full employment. Now, so far, you're probably going to yourself, well, none of that sounds very conservative. You said your college professor was a very conservative. This doesn't sound conservative. This feels very liberal to me. But my college professor also explained to us that you have a percentage of people who are, in his exact words, terminally unemployed. People that can't hold a job because, not my words, they're losers. Not my words. And so they can't hold a job. And so, they start a job and they're just chronically fired, right? They're kind of chronically looking for a new job. They're chronically waiting for that next management position. They're just good enough to get into a job somewhere and then boo, go somewhere else. And we know that in places like Wendy's and other retailers, the average tenure is a whopping 6 weeks. That's what it is. And yes, that is the cat meowing at my feet because he knows that I'm on the air, and this is his new thing right now. When I do meetings or stuff, he comes in here and meows. So at 4.5% in the state of Virginia. And the other thing that I put in there is you could argue it can go down to 4%. Certainly when you get down to 4%, you are really just starting to get into people looking for jobs. And this is how we get rid of the cat. Hello, cat. Say hello. Tell him meow. Tell him meow. Tell him meow. There, I'm going to hold you up. Now you're just like, you're humiliating me. Yeah? Because you came in here meowing at me. You want me to put you on the floor now? He's not as big as he looks, but yes, he is. He's not missing. He's not missing meals. Oh, dear. I'm going to throw you out and close the door. I will put on the technical difficulties. I will close the door and throw you out, and not in that order. Oh, now my face is all cat-furred. Excuse me. Problem solved. Oh my God. Shedding like a... Oh, Dora, he's totally attracted to Zoom calls and stuff. And yes, I'm rolled to cat here now. Should technical difficulties and change the shirt over. When you get to 4%, you're definitely getting into these scenarios of people that are between jobs, coming to the job market, et cetera. Again, Virginia's at 4.5%. So Virginia's at full employment, right? And you can kind of argue that point, but a little bit. But now you're only arguing a half a percentage. Now, we've had 610,000 Americans die from COVID, over 11,000 of them from the state of Virginia. I looked up that number and put that in there. Roughly, it's close. It's close to everybody in Mount Vernon, Virginia, dying. I picked Mount Vernon, even though the population is about 13,000, because people, Mount Vernon, Jefferson, right? So people know Mount Vernon. Martinsville or Martinsdale was another one that came up. And I know that's kind of a lesser known community in Virginia, but I knew people that know Mount Vernon, so I picked that. Then you have a bunch of COVID long haulers. But here's the other thing that you have. The Republican Party, since 2009, which is the last time federal minimum wage was raised in this country, and when the federal minimum wage reached its point of $7.25 an hour in 2009, the push to go to $15 an hour started in 2009. This was born out of the Great Recession and the screwing over of the banks and living wage and all of this other stuff. And what have Republicans said for 11 years? What's been the talking point? Minimum wage job is not meant to provide a living wage. If you don't want to have a minimum wage job, go out and better yourself and don't work for a minimum wage job. Well, you had millions of Americans because they were forced out of work by COVID closures and because they lived paycheck to paycheck and had no savings. And believe me, the $1,400 check that they got at the beginning of the pandemic didn't cut it. And they have addictions of food, clothing, and shelter. And they couldn't go back to flipping burgers. They couldn't go back to working a cash register. They didn't need as many people. They just need someone at the drive-thru. They didn't need as many people stocking the shelves because hours were limited and a lot of places, a lot of stores were closed. So what did these people do? They didn't sit on their ass. They took your advice, Republicans. They went and bettered themselves. They got jobs working from home and customer service jobs. They became DoorDash delivery or Amazon delivery. They went to work in an Amazon distribution center, which you can argue all day long that's good, bad, or indifferent. But an Amazon distribution center, hire for fire, terrible working conditions or not, they do pay $15 an hour to start. And they can't hire enough people in those distribution centers. So in the state of Virginia, minimum wage is $9.50. Who would want to go to work at Wendy's for $9.50 an hour to put up with people like the former lieutenant governor of Virginia who are looking down on minimum wage workers and basically saying you're just sitting at home because you're getting an unemployment check, even though the state data doesn't support that suggestion? To put up with anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, and potentially get shot or the snot beaten out of you because you potentially are telling somebody, hey, you got to put on a mask. Who wants to put up with that? The answer is no one. And that's why you can't find the work. But here's the thing that I'm mystified by. Unemployment in the United States is 5.9%. That's U3. And I'm going to spare the difference between U1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. U3 is the published number. So we're about 1 percentage point away from full employment. Bottom employment, typically in a really strong economy, is around 4 to 4.5%. The best Trump got it down to was 3.5, and I believe that was May of 2018 when it dipped to about 3.5%. And you're just not going to squeeze it any lower than that because, again, you have a percentage of people that are constantly entering the job force as they finish school, as they finish vocational training, or maybe they leave the military and now they're looking for a job in the private sector, right? You have a group of a couple of 100,000 people popping in every month, right? You got people that quit. You have people who are fired. And so you're always going to have this sliver of people that are looking. If you look at the number of states that are not at full employment, there's 23 states that have unemployment rates above 5%. Of those, only 2, New Mexico and Hawaii, are over 8%. New Mexico's at 8%, Hawaii is at 8.1%. You have 7 states that are from 5.4 to 5.9. So we have 7 states that are getting close to full employment. And check this out. There are 6 states of those 23 states which aren't to full employment. They cut the federal unemployment benefits. And it still hasn't moved the needle. And then, as I pointed out on Monday, you have a state like Missouri that cut the federal benefits because, there's not enough people and they're just sitting at home and their unemployment number went up despite the fact they kicked a bunch of people off of unemployment. So that means the U3 number is actually artificially low because they kicked so many people off, and the Missouri employment numbers would be worse, which isn't a surprise because Missouri has one of the worst COVID outbreaks in the United States right now. What a shock. But now we're going to adjust our tinfoil hats. Are we ready to adjust our tinfoil hats here? Because it doesn't add up. The numbers don't add up. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the percentage of U.S., not the percentage of available workforce, but the percentage of total Americans. So when you look at percentage of total Americans who can work, we're immediately chafing out anybody who is birth to 13. I mean, technically from 14 to 16, you can work. And yes, if you get into farm jobs, you can be younger and there's a big ass. Let's keep it simple, all right? We're cutting everybody out who's under 13. We're also cutting out everybody who is over 65 because that you get on Medicare, you get on Medicare. That's the psychological retirement age, even though full Social Security is 67. So you cut out all of those people. So we're talking people from 14 to 65. And I actually don't think that how number is caught. At the height of the Trump economy, total U.S. population, 46 out of 100 people, 48 out of 100 people in the United States were working at the height of the Trump economy. Right now, we're at about 46 and a half. Which actually is, when you look at previous points in history, and we have lots of the reason I'm scratching my face, I just have cat fur all over my face now, and it's driving me nuts. If you look at those numbers, we're actually in a pretty good economy. Economic data that just came out today, lowest number of new unemployment claims filed since January, or since going back to the peak when over 900,000 files new claims when Trump was still in the White House. That number is at 360. Economics 101, when that number gets to around 250,000, you're kind of getting to that full employment number, because if you have 250,000 people filing new claims, you're adding in about 250,000 people in the workforce each month. And so when you kind of look at that numbers, you're now kind of creating enough jobs to keep people to work. So where's the tinfoil hat come in this here? We're short 10 million people in this country. Now, I want to be crystal clear. I am in no way saying that I want to be crystal clear. I am not saying or even implying that the number of people who have died from COVID, that those numbers got cooked. I won't believe it for a second. And here's why. We know from history, from Germany, from Darfur, from Cambodia, it's really hard to hide that many bodies if they've died in that short of period of time. It's basically impossible. Even if you want to go full tinfoil hat, United States, space lasers, like Elon Musk sent them to orbit. No, you just can't make that many. And there would be too many people going, where's grandma? It's just, no. So I am not implying that. I do think that we actually are close to full employment in this country. And the reason that I think we have the numbers we're at is we had 610,000 people die. We have 3 million women who have left the workforce because they're having to care for children. And for some of those women, the cost of childcare became so prohibitive, it's cheaper for them to stay home. For some of the women, they are worried because their children are unvaccinated and they don't want to send their children to daycare or camp. So they're keeping them home. And for some of those women, they have children or they have a spouse or a family member who is a COVID long hauler, and they were not the principal income maker in that household, and they are having to care for that person. So we've lost 3 million people out of the workforce. It's a pretty solid number, and there's tons of stories and reports on this. And then you have the COVID long haulers themselves. If there's a symptom that apparently some people have lost taste and smell, like for instance, if you're a line cook, a lot of line cooks in the United States, if you're a line cook and you lost your sense of taste and smell, you can't be a line cook. There's some people that get an even worse symptom from it, where literally food smells horrible to them. There are people who are COVID long haulers. The food, the smell and the taste of food is vomitous to them. And they're actually having problems because they can't even eat because the food physically makes them ill. Because how can you be a cook if you can't even be, or for that matter, a cashier, if you're a long hauler and you can't even be exposed to the smell of food because it literally makes you violently ill. And I'm just using that as one example. I mean, if you have heart damage, if you have lung damage, and say you were a construction worker, you can't go back to that field. What are you going to do? So my tinfoil hat theory is that they're not being honest with us, but what they're not being honest with us is the number of people who have been disabled by COVID. And part of why I don't think they're being honest with this is because they don't fully know themselves. Because this is this aspect of COVID that we don't understand. And so I am going to move off of COVID because I went longer than that I want. And we're going to move on to the next topic. And I said 2.5, so we're 1.5. We're going to go to the next one, which is drought. Yesterday, Jay Inslee declared drought emergency in the state of Washington. That included basically everywhere but the Puget Sound lowlands. So Everett, Tacoma, Olympia, Seattle, Bellevue. That's basically it. We're a little island here. They feel like the water supply there is okay. In eastern Washington, for the first time in over 20 years, there are some counties that are essentially at a level of catastrophic drought. It is just unimaginably dry. And Cliff Mass, I got to do it.
Chud. Cannibalistic. Humanoid. Underground.
Cliff. Cliff Mass wrote a blog today, about how, and of course his blog focuses on Western Washington for the most part, that we're going to be, and it's true, we are going to be a cooler pattern. Matter of fact, we're going to be unseasonably cool tomorrow and Saturday. There is the tiniest little chance like this. We might get a stray shower or some drizzle or some mist. I don't think, looking at the weather models, that there is going to be enough to put anything in the rain gauge at SeaTac Airport. I think we're going to see a very similar scenario to July 27 of 2017. It's crazy that I can remember dates like this. July 27, in July 27, 2017, we had the same thing, a very big, strong marine push. We were in a very extended drought. It's the longest period. It rained at the federal building 0.02 inches. However, the records are kept at SeaTac, and SeaTac only got a trace, and trace don't count. Trace is 0. So even though that is actually the driest month we've ever had, which is trace. And when I look at the weather models, I don't even think SeaTac's going to get a trace. Tonight, the red apple fire, which started outside of Kashmir, Chelan, has grown from 14,000 acres. And that's been in 48 hours. And we are learning tonight that investigators believe that the red apple fire was caused by somebody who decided to burn a slash pile, a debris pile on their property because they know better than all those scientists. And now 1,500 homes and 14,000 acres are threatened. The Cedar Creek fire has now closed down a 12-mile stretch of the North Cascades Highway. That will be closed at minimum through the weekend. It originally was a 2-mile closure. Then it became a 7-mile closure. Now it is a 12-mile closure because that fire is spreading. And there were people in a Twitter discussion today who were like, well, it's okay. You can still go around. Just take the Forest Service roads. The Forest Service roads where the fires are on each side of the highway. Really? Are you really that? Yes, you are. You really are that friggin'. I'm going to say it again. Right now, we are in a weather pattern that is providing us, which is why I'm getting into the whole Cliff Mass thing here, that is providing us this very cool area. But Washington State is a state divided, and there were some people that were making comments on Cliff Mass's blog. It's like, well, it's much cooler now and things, and so that's really going to help. But it's like, Eastern Washington has heat advisories and red flag warnings going on. It's friggin' was 100 degrees in Spokane yesterday. They're pushing record heat. There is a tale of two states right now. We are truly, if you are on the western side of the Cascade Crest, we are really in this little kind of cool bubble almost across the entire West Coast. There are places that are still roasting. I had commented to our moderator team back, I think, on Monday, because I was looking at the wildfire situation in British Columbia, and I was like, there's a lot of fires, but I'm seeing a lot of green dots on the map. You're 94 tomorrow. Congratulations, Carl. I know 94 is almost getting more normal there, but yeah, we're seeing like this 25-degree difference from one side of the state earlier. Guess the chug caught in 4K on Facebook. Really? I'm totally wearing long sleeves tomorrow. Oh my goodness. People are answering the question. You'd be a tiger. I saw that. The weather in Seattle is kind of cool. Well, it's nice now, but this morning it was really cool and gray. It'll be even tomorrow, be a struggle to get to 70 degrees. And Saturday, I don't think we get to 70 degrees. I think Saturday will be like 68-ish. Courtney's in the house. How are you doing, Courtney? Get ready for fire season. And, get ready for smoke. I keep saying it. And remember, part of getting ready for smoke is cloth mask don't work. You need N95 mask for smoke. You should be setting up a clean room. This is like the time to do it. Don't wait to set up your clean room when I'm going like French toast emergency. Smoke is coming. It's tomorrow. It's going to be bad. It's too late. Because then if you're going to Fred Meyer or Home Depot or Target or Walmart to go pick up your box fan, you got everybody else going and picking up the box fan and the filter, the filter to and the bungee cords to attach the bungee cord, the fan to the filter to the fan. Wow, I just messed that all up. Montana is like just covered in smoke, and Idaho is really covered in smoke. So the time to do it is now. And if you can, if you don't have central air, if you don't live in an air-conditioned building, if you have the monetary resources to even just get, an AC unit for a single room, one of the interior, and I've said many times, they're kind of junk. They really don't work well, but they're better than nothing. This is the time to do it now because they're in inventory again. There you go. Ursinate, exactly. This is the time to do it. Chip, exactly. Actually, Dora, it's a lot easier to get N95 masks. The supply is getting a lot better. I will say with the COVID cases going up, the supply will probably get a little tougher to get. So the biggest thing here is the thing about, and maybe it's a little unfair on this Cliff blog to kind of like go, Cliff, dude, it's more his readers because they're like, oh, it's cool. But they're just looking at it as like, oh, it's cool across the whole state. It's, it's cool. And it's like, no, it's not cool. It's hotter than the butthole of the sun once you get over the east side of the Cascades. And it is hotter than normal because it does get hotter in the butthole of the sun over there in the summer. We are already here burned more acres in the state of Washington than the entire 2019 fire season. And the officials believe that this is going to be worse than 2020. And if you remember when it all exploded, when it went in 2020, that's when we were in the cloud of smoke. And it typically, it happened in August. August is coming. And then once it went going, well, that's really hot, the butthole of the sun. I love Stevens Pass. Stevens Pass backside, the backside of Stevens Pass, that was my favorite place to ski because it was mogully and icy in the afternoon, and I learned to ski on the East Coast where things are mogully and kind of little ice covered. And so that was home. That was like native skiing, and I could really ski in that terrain there. So I really like skiing the backside of Stevens Pass, and it's been forever since I've done it. Last thing that we're going to do this evening is we had talked about this. Hopefully when I just... Malcontent News. Yeah, I was worried that when I clicked on it was going to run. I'm because we're in Studio One and I still haven't set Studio Three back, so sorry about that. Um, Lake Washington School District, we had covered this. We had the students on. We did a really wonderful interview with them. They showed amazing courage and fortitude in the conversation we had. And we had said, we had played about a 3-minute teaser. We had promoted their video in the comments. And we said that we would be playing their video at some point. And tonight is that point. And I rolled camera a little too early there, so sorry about that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to roll this video. You'll be able to comment. It is the entire video done by Lake Washington students and their experience as students of color in the Lake Washington School District. Doesn't get like the hardcore content warning. I'm not going to roll the black screen and the silence. But this does talk about acts of racism. It talks about acts of intolerance. And so some viewer discretion advised. It is a magnificent video. And with that, I give you Lake Washington school students.
Lake Washington School District definitely says they value their students of color, but I don't feel like they're very valued because sometimes there's hostile situations and it's like, why is no one helping? Why aren't admins stepping in? Why aren't teachers stepping in?
I don't feel like our school values BIPOC students. I think a lot of the time when BIPOC students are being recognized, it's for the school district to appear better than it is. It's kind of like being a poster child, you know, for the Lake Washington School District.
Going through speech therapy and having two speech therapists and being in special ed classrooms almost all day and being bullied because of race. The school district does a good job of just focusing on the people in a certain range of normal. Everybody else has to figure out on their own.
I feel like everyone's personal experiences do matter, and they need to be addressed regardless, big or small, who you are, what your race is, your gender, your sexual orientation. They should be addressed.
I remember the last day of 6th grade, this was in our I Experience class, a group of white boys, their skit was very, very inappropriate. They were pretending to be Mexican and they had Mexican accents and they brought in sombreros. They also pretended to be maids because they were pretending to be Mexican, which was so appalling to me. And then they also pretended to be Chinese and had an accent. And I was sitting there so confused why the teacher wasn't doing anything. And I looked back at the teacher and he was just kind of looking at some papers. I knew he saw what was happening, but he didn't act upon it. So after their skit, I was like, hey, that is not funny. I don't know why you think that's funny. I think it's really important for students to be called out on their actions. We're taught to trust adults like from a young age, but you know, when in school sometimes we need our teachers to be there for us, to intervene, and they're not there. It kind of breaks the sense of trust.
So people constantly make a stereotype of saying all black people are strong and big or fast or athletic or have big reproduction organs.
A student called me the N-word to my face in front of basically the entire class. Teacher heard it and everything. Nothing was done.
Of kind of feeling like you're a chicken in a room of squirrels. People look at you comparatively different enough to see that they almost don't treat you like human anymore.
One particular teacher who was a white man over the course of at least 5 years would constantly say the N-word in class. And when he would say it in class, he wouldn't say it once and leave it. He would say it 5 times in a class period. Would constantly get reported, and students were told that the reason that he couldn't be fired was because he was part of the teachers union.
During the summer, there were some disturbing pictures from students of my school doing very inappropriate racist things. I felt like this was something that needed to be condemned and was not being condemned.
In Northstar, if you get said the N-word or anything like that, you get suspended for a couple of days. You would get punished almost right off the bat. Here, bullying and the way people get in trouble, it's not really as harsh because they know the consequences aren't bad enough.
And hearing that whole like, oh, I can say the N-word because I have black friends. and basically being told things like Black Lives Matter shouldn't exist and that they were unimportant and you didn't need them, and that if I really wanted to succeed in life, maybe I should do it myself instead of leaning on the fact that I was Black. I heard that a lot, which is just super unfair because as a white person, of course they can say that. They don't have to worry about things like that. They don't have to worry about discrimination on the basis of race.
Things like bullying aren't really able to be caught easily because they're generally done on social media. And then the stuff you see in school is generally the tipping point or the boiling point of all that stuff on social media.
A couple years ago, there was a basketball game, and it was a school blackout game. A whole bunch of Lake Washington students showed up in blackface, and they claimed that it was because of the blackout game, or they claimed it was just dark purple paint, so who should care? Why should it matter? But it was blackface. To sit there and watch as like a large amount of my peers walked around and like honestly behaved like monkeys, like that's what they were doing. Just direct racism. It is not just an insult. It is not just disheartening. If I see anyone in blackface, I take that as a threat. They mean to do me harm. And then when it got called out, like the blackout games ended up being canceled. And that's when students got really upset and said that it was unfair and they wanted to protest. So here you have all of these students coming in saying they're going to protest against anti-racism because these white students feel like they have been cheated out of something for once.
You can't address a problem if people aren't willing to say the problem, right? In a sense, it's like nobody's going to say the problem unless they're so fed up with it.
Administration only talking to you when there's an issue they have to fix, because a lot of the time too that issue isn't fixed and you're kind of just left to do everything yourself. I showed a book called The Only Black Student, but it was basically a book that would help teachers and admin alike understand how to recognize Black students in particular, and it could be applicable to a lot of BIPOC students that weren't Black as well. And I was told basically that if I wanted to do that, I would have to buy the books and supply them. So why is it that I, a biracial student, would have to work hard and pay the money that I knew my school had to respect me? It's unreasonable, especially when it takes such an emotional and sometimes even physical toll on these students.
Like that felt like the normal to me, so I couldn't really recognize it for a while. So I just kind of wish someone else, like a teacher or administrator or whoever was kind of recognized it and kind of helped me get out of that place, because like the people with that kind of stuff has happened since the beginning, they don't know anything, so that's like the normal for them, so they don't know what to do about it.
I was tokenized by a lot of students and teachers alike, expected to know certain things about my culture and talk on things that I didn't want to talk on. When we would learn about, say, slavery in history class, they would look at me and say, well, Adrian, what do you think? You know what I think, you know? Like, it was bad. I don't know what else to say. It's just kind of that level of responsibility that was immediately put on me to explain different things, and the fact that the teacher felt uncomfortable to do it themselves. And that was very difficult for me, having to constantly educate my peers. And I definitely don't want students walking up to me asking me what Kwanzaa is. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. A lot of the time, it was left up to me to explain why something hurt my feelings or why something was detrimental to me. And a lot of the time, my white peers wouldn't get in trouble. Watching a large amount of, I guess I would say, like coddling of white students and having to kind of sit back and feel like nothing was being done for me.
My parents always told me, I really don't know where they got this. They said, if you speak out against teachers or principals or other students, you're not going to get into college. And I was like, oh. So, you know, I just listened to them up until last year. I was like, this needs to be done. I cannot sit back. I cannot, just be quiet anymore.
When a student came to me and started getting in my face and telling me that I shouldn't be proud of being Black and that Black Lives Matter, the whole system shouldn't exist, and that Black people were being too greedy, I told them that they were being ignorant and that it was racist what they were saying. And I got very, very upset. And I got pulled to the side and told that I needed to calm down. And then I got called into the principal's office and was basically expected to apologize. That was really difficult for me. In that moment, I expected the administration to make the student take accountability and to recognize that they were at fault. But in the end, it turned into the white student crying, and then me being expected to accept their apology.
If we all want to be on equal ground, different students need more resources in order to get there. And I think allocating resources towards BIPOC students are really important. Hiring more staff of color. It's important that students see a representation of them.
So up until junior year, I never had a teacher of color ever. They were all white. My first teacher of color ever was Miss Crystal Vesper. She teaches AP Lang at Eastlake High School. She's so amazing, and she's the first teacher I've had that's really emphasized Black Lives Matter. Her being someone that I could relate with was something so meaningful and empowering to me. I think it's kind of difficult in Lake Washington with so many staff, admin being white and can't relate to our experiences.
Racism is a mental health crisis. I know students, they may not feel as comfortable coming to their regular student counselor as it doesn't pertain to them. They may not be able to relate, so they just bottle it up and keep it inside.
And I deal with problems with bullying and racism. I was probably depressed at like 7, honestly, because I didn't have anybody to talk to. I wish there was a way for people not to have to go the experience of having to feel alone like I did.
I never talked to my counselors. She was a white lady. She was great, but she wasn't someone that I could talk about the things I was going through, because she wouldn't understand.
Regardless who you are, what your race is, your gender, your sexual orientation, going to someone that looks like you, it makes it a lot more comfortable for that student to do.
You have this incident with racism with another student, right? And you don't know that counselor. Like, what person in their right mind would be comfortable to say, hey, I had this problem happening. I don't know if you experienced this or not, so I don't know if you can deal with it or not in some sense. And so it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable because they don't know they can solve the problems.
Hiring some sort of mental health specialist or counselor who is a BIPOC individual who may have dealt with microaggressions, discrimination in the past, big or small, so they can feel comfortable coming and talking about these issues and feel like it's really getting addressed and not just being brushed off. There should be things put in place to not only help the students feel safe and comfortable, but also the teachers. Teachers are probably, on eggshells, and the mental health of teachers is something that needs to be addressed.
I feel like a teacher may be scared because they feel like the district won't back them up, or their school admins won't back them up, which I feel is, quite unfortunate. So I think having a sturdy admin and staff that will stand behind teachers and creating a space for them to speak out on these situations is the best way for a teacher to feel comfortable.
I was told that I could pull books from the library to try and give monthly or weekly excerpts to basically the teachers and have them emailed out. I chose So You Want to Talk About Race. And the initial passage I wanted to start with for the teachers and for admin just in general was intersectionality, because that's a really important aspect of our school culture. And then at the last second, it got rejected. And I was told that the school wasn't ready, or that it wasn't the proper time. But when will it be the proper time for our BIPOC students to finally feel accepted and to feel like they are part of the group?
Teachers in their classrooms need to start being more uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. Because these conversations need to start happening. Just because a teacher's uncomfortable doesn't mean they can't dismiss the situation or dismiss a lived experience. Having conversations with students, I feel like, is such a great way, sparking conversation, especially in classrooms.
The more we diversify our school systems, the more comfortable students will be able to interact with their teachers and have a better student-to-teacher relationship.
Bob, my middle school North Star teacher, he was white, and he made us feel so comfortable that we could really talk about anything with him.
In my AP Lang class, it was majority students of color. We had 3 Caucasian students, and we had very uncomfortable discussions, and you could definitely feel the discomfort from the white students, but they still understood. They showed empathy towards us. It was such a great conversation to have with them. If a teacher feels, scared to speak out, I would say, just do it. I feel like it opens up so many doors for conversations.
This is the truth. And I think people need to know the truth so they're not fed false information.
This is Toronto. She's no longer at Lake Washington High School, but when she was there, she was there. And she would invite Black students to come to her office and talk to her. And she would open that door so that they felt comfortable and well received. And a lot of us didn't get that from other people, Not to say that it was necessarily like their job to constantly be checking in on us, but it felt nice to have someone do that for once, instead of having to seek out the help yourself or even just not get help at all.
Miss Crystal Vesper, I give my credit to her as I find my voice because I felt like I didn't have one before that. And from an Asian teacher to an Asian student, I was like, wow, she has a voice. That could be me.
Mr. Verbanik, love that man. Never made excuses for the actions of other people, nothing like that. He would listen, and that meant a lot to me. Sorry. Mr. Terridge as well, always there for me. Made sure that me and my brother, who went to school at Lake Washington before me, were okay and that we had everything we needed. And I really appreciated that, because a lot of the time, all that you ask for is to be accepted and recognized. And I feel that's really what I got.
But personally, I think they should be educated at a certain level just to respect other people's cultures and race and that kind of stuff at a young age.
Starting young as possible, is the best. It's really important to teach students that if this is happening to you, this is what it's called. This is not okay. You should not be okay with it. I wanted to have that taught to me in elementary school, so I could have called out earlier. So, diversifying the curriculum starting in elementary school.
There hasn't been a lot done for Asian American students. Even though they make up a large population of our schools, how often do we see them mentioned in history classes or anything else, It's not just on history teachers to acknowledge the history behind everything. In science, why can't you mention scientists of color? There's so many more things that can be done. Why are students in our schools still reading Cry of the Beloved Country? It's written by a white person. It doesn't count as a diversity credit. It doesn't. In my class, we read Things Fall Apart. Mad Respect, written by a Black man.
You should be able to see your homeroom teacher more than twice a week, and it should be less of a study hall and more of a space where you do different activities and other things that varied, and it would make that group of people feel really, really comfortable around each other.
It feels good when Black people and Native American people and Latinx people are acknowledged. Acknowledgement can't just be, here's a day that represents you and that's it. It needs to be continuous steps to take. What are things that we can do in our community to address these issues? How are students feeling? And I'm speaking broadly, but healthcare, the criminal justice system, how are African American and Latinx individuals being disproportionately affected? In terms of education, how much easier is it for a white person to graduate from a 4-year degree than a Black person to graduate? And obtaining wealth, how easy is it for Black people to get a loan, to buy a house? What is redlining? How can we change our value system to make sure that we're truly equal in this country? These are questions that we should be asking, but often they will give us a day or a month and they'll say, oh yes, yeah, we'll acknowledge it, but we'll just do it to keep you quiet, just to know that oh yeah, we're doing something, but there's really no change being done.
There was a big rise in social justice being seen as cool or woke.
High schoolers and middle schoolers do this trendy thing. They'll make a post when it's trending about the unjust social problems happening, and they just post about it, and then as soon as it dies down, they stop talking about it.
White students coming through posting a black square or attending one march, it doesn't fly with me. I'm not impressed because all those years that these Black students have been working, they weren't there.
For students who are uncomfortable, I think just saying what you feel and your experiences is a great way to learn and also learn about other people's experiences.
In the same way that they have made a list of students' rights and responsibilities, make that for the teachers, make that for the administration. So then we have a clear list of ideas and reasons and like the possible outcomes of what's going to happen when someone does something that is not okay. If students have that, then teachers should have that too. You very rarely saw black students in assemblies or at teacher events or anything like that. You very rarely saw them being given the microphone or the chance to speak. That's extremely disappointing. The school district really needs to highlight these people. There are so many in our school district who are darker skinned and are often put at the back or like the back of people's minds. And that's not okay. You know, we need to give these people the opportunity to talk. Mock trials? Mock trials. Let me tell you, I have seen the costumes that students have dressed up in. There were students throughout my entire high school career dressed up as Cleopatra and Chinese people. Chinese people. Deliberately racist. Went to the nearest costume store, ordered online, put face paint on and everything to imitate facial hair that is stereotypically and racistly associated with Chinese people. And then they get a better grade because they truly dressed up and acknowledged the character. I mentioned it at a staff meeting about diversity, and then after the fact I heard that certain teachers weren't happy about me mentioning it and said that they felt like I was attacking them. Well, guess what? That's a white supremacist narrative, to feel like I'm constantly attacking you for acknowledging the things that you have done to me and other people. That is not an attack. That's me giving you an opportunity to take accountability.
And we transition at the end of the video to this on the Malcontent News Twitter feed. If you're not following us on Twitter, you can follow us at Malcontentment T, because you couldn't put Malcontentment Tango on there. Malcontentment T on Twitter. But this we posted earlier today. So these bumper stickers that you see above my head up there were left at Lake Washington High School this morning. Outside the school, not inside the school. But these bumper stickers here, screw CRT, critical race theory, and any milquetoast teacher who caves to their union. So these bumper stickers left at Lake Washington High School in Kirkland today. Now, I'm not saying the school district did it, but someone in the community did this today. Yes, it is definitely and unquestionably.
These are Chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Yeah, it definitely is Chuds. No, they spelled milquetoast right. It is. It's spelled right. It's funny. A couple of people have said that. But that is the correct spelling for milquetoast. So I'm seeing your thing there, but it's a weird use of the word. I will say that. It was like milquetoast. It's like, well, at least they used a $10 word. There's about 3 dog whistles blown in. There's about 3 whistles blown in just 11 words there. And this actually has been one of our more popular tweets that we had put up today. So anyway, somebody went and collected these that were left there. But, as woke as people want to think they are, and as progressive as the Lake Washington School District is, and compared to other school districts, that's the thing you got to understand. Like, it seems like, oh, this terrible school district, blah, 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 blah. This is one of the more woke school districts in the state of Washington. This is one of the better school districts. Keep that in mind. You're seeing almost as good as it gets. It's downhill from here. This is endemic in our school systems. And it's really frustrating. These kids, and they're kids, They shouldn't, but this is just still going on. And the part that's disappointing for me, just as a parent who had kids, that parents aren't being listened to, that students aren't being listened to, and, it's kind of F your feelings, and you're overreacting or blaming, or we get the whole white fragility of, well, it's making me uncomfortable, so let's not have this conversation. We got to do better. There's an interesting thing that's happening in the United States of America. And there's a point that I'm going to close on tonight. And the situation that we're in as a country and some of the things that are going on don't surprise me. And it probably won't surprise my audience when you learn this tidbit too. 15 and under, birth to 15 in the United States is now the majority. If you are a minority, the BIPOC population outnumbers the white population of this country now for 15 and under. In 2022, there will be a majority of minorities in the public school systems, or in the school systems in general, public or private, at the primary level, K through 12. There's nothing that's going to stop this freight train at this point. It isn't lost on me that as the public school system is tipping over to where the biggest benefactors of a public education are now Black, Indigenous, and persons of color populations, that we have movement in this country. We want to further gut school budgets. More extreme views go, we don't want to fund public education at all. We'll just give people vouchers and let them decide what private religious school they want to go to. Something that we fought a 20-year war, at least I understand, in Afghanistan over, for what I'm not exactly sure at this point. And of course, the most extreme views are, we should just get rid of the public education system anyway. It's a waste of money. They're just teaching them liberal indoctrination. And you have states like Tennessee who are saying, we're not only not going to tell the kids about COVID vaccine, we're not going to tell them about vaccine at all. And this generation that they want to rob of an education, rob of the most basic of basic health cares, that people in what Trump would call shithole countries take for granted, like vaccinations, because of organizations like UNICEF, the UN, Doctors Without Borders, the Gates Foundation, as much as you may, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with that, right? But you have multiple organizations that have made huge pushes to make sure that the world's children are vaccinated from preventable diseases. And there has been huge impact on this globally. But we're going to stop doing that in the United States. And all of this is happening at the same time that the biggest benefactors of a public school education are the minorities, because they outnumber in the schools the number of white students. Isn't that something, how that's just lining up perfectly? Isn't that something that as this minority generation that will be the majority, and they'll be voting in 10 years, and they want to raise the drawbridge from that? The point's not lost on me, because I have said many, many times, the biggest message that you see from that party is a message of fear, because fear sells. I say that as somebody who is in marketing. One of the things in Marketing 101 they teach you is something called the fire extinguisher close. If you're not familiar with the fire extinguisher close, the fire extinguisher close is this. Bob and Martha and little Johnny and little Sally show up in the hardware store, and they're interested in a fire extinguisher, and the sales rep explains to him a fire extinguisher and all the benefits of it, and says, and it's only $29.95. And Bob says, I want to go home and think about it tonight. And the salesperson goes, Bob, do you want Martha, little Johnny, and little Sally to burn to death in a fire tonight because you wanted to think about the fire extinguisher? See, fear sells. And there's a certain subset of people who don't feel safe and then they gravitate towards authoritarian rule. But these are the same people that also will look you in the eyes and say racism in this country doesn't exist. They would dismiss the video that they just saw as exaggerations and in their heads and fantasy and get over it. But you know what they're really afraid of? What they're really afraid of is the writings on the wall that they are going to become the minority. And there's nothing that's going to change this. Nothing that isn't sinister, at least. Nothing that doesn't go into directions and places that we don't want to go, I would hope. So why is it they're so afraid that if when they become, and it will be a when, that when they become the minority, that they will be treated like they treated the minorities in this country for the last 400 years. If racism doesn't exist, if systemic racism doesn't exist, if these things have all been resolved, then what's the concern about your percentage control fading away? Shouldn't there be no fear at all if none of this exists? Shouldn't you be ready to embrace this new world order, this change that is coming, the great melting pot of America, of all races, colors, and creeds? Why the fear? We know why the fear. Because they're afraid that they're going to get treated the way that they have treated minorities for the last 400 years, and that terrifies them. Because they know the score. Totally CJ 1295. It's just like, yep. And anyway, and on that happy thought, I think we're going to close things up. Didn't see many of your animal things. Saw lots of comment. You guys were also the animal I would want to be as a wombat. So I could smash my enemies. It just scrolled by. You wanted to be a wombat. Anyway, you wanted to be a wombat so you could smash your enemies. Oh, joy, fear totally sells. I say that as somebody who was in marketing. That's actually one of the reasons that if you say you look at liberal radio, liberal talk show, it's very hard because liberal doctrine isn't steeped in fear. It is steeped in embracing change. And that's a tougher sell. The other problem that you have on the side of the liberal things is I saw this meme and it was just so great. There's a meme on the internet that uses the Lord of the Rings, which is the dwarf saying to, I'm terrible with names. I've only read those books like 10 times. And he's saying to an elf, I never thought I would be fighting against an elf. And then the meme was, I never thought I would be fighting against or fighting side by side another liberal. And then the caption was, liberal whose views are 1% different from the dwarf, basically calling the dwarf a piece of trash. And this is just so true. This is the other problem. Yes, thank you, Joy. Y'all are blowing me up into things. My name is just... my ability to remember names is truly broken, and I have a diagnosis to back that up now. Smash my enemies with my butt. By the way, if I could be any animal, I would be a sea otter. Sea otters to me are just flipping amazing animals. The fact that you have to eat 7,000 calories a day is already sign me up, man. All you can eat sushi, floating in your little kelp bed, hold hands so you don't float away. You're smart, get to use tools. You're like wicked smart. You're essentially an alpha predator. The only thing you really got to worry about is humans or swimming too far out of your kelp beds. Water bear. Water bear. By the way, there was a video that I saw. It was I see bats. Someone was talking about bats. There's a video. They flip the camera 180 degrees, so instead of looking at the bats as if they're hanging upside down, the bats look like they're standing up. And then they played some goth music. It so worked. It was just friggin' orcas, but the sea otters have to be stupid and venture out of the kelp beds. The orcas can't get into the kelp beds to get to the otters. That's what I mean. They're like orcas are truly like one of the top alpha predators. But the sea otters, you got to screw up. You basically go out of the kelp beds. Catherine knows exactly what I'm talking. That video, I saw it for the first time. It was like, this is so awesome. Kimberly see that video too. Oh my God, all of you have seen this video. I'm tardy to the party on this, but at least I'm cool enough to have seen that video. We will be back on the air on Monday. We are going on the road the last week of July. We're going to combine business and pleasure. In the last week of July, we're going to be doing some potential wildfire chasing, depending on what we can find, going between here and California. And, doing some patchy live streams and all, but we will be going live for that. So be good to each other. Fight the good fight. We're all there. Pandas aren't endangered anymore, I guess. Pandas are cool. And I guess, when I saw the thing with the pandas playing in the snow, that was really, really cool. Joy, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for sharing this student-led video. We've dropped the naked mole rat. Shelly, no. Anyway, everybody stay out on naked mole rat. I think we're just going to say that's it for tonight. Malcontent out. Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa. Fuck you.
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter.